Hey, this is Chris Mclernon from many things, but most recently Kinell, and you are listening to Thunder Underground.
Welcome to episode 381 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always, and this week's a really cool one because Chris Mclernon of Kinell, Saigon Kick, Cold Sweat, and many other projects is here to talk about all those things. We've got a great chat with Chris coming up that's about 45 minutes long, talking about his brand new band Kinell, some Saigon Kick, all kinds of great stuff in there. But first, before we get into that, I need to let you know who we're sponsored by, and that would be Sunset Tattoo, a tattoo shop located in Midtown Tulsa. Their tattoos are done good and proper, they're state licensed, and they are mother approved. Well over 25 years of experience from Jake Thompson and his crew over there. If you call, text, email, somehow get in touch with them, you can set up a time to talk about what work you need to have done. You can hit up the socials. Facebook and Instagram are both Sunset Tattoo Tulsa. There's tons of photos on there that shows that they are excellent at all different styles. Like I've said many times, I've had work done by Jake at Sunset Tattoo that I'm very happy with. I intend to have more done here in the future. I know many others that have as well that are happy, and I'm sure you will be happy too. So hit up Sunset Tattoo and tell them you heard about them on Thunder Underground. We've also got DEB Concerts, a concert promoter based right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They bring tons of great acts to the Tulsa area. They've been booking shows at the old IDL Ballroom. Now they've been booking shows at the BOK Center. They brought in stuff like at the BOK Center on the arena level like Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, Megadeth, Lamb of God, Poison, Tom Kiefer. They brought in stuff to the club level here in Tulsa like Saxon, Last in Line, Buck Cherry, Beasto Blanco, Winger, Warrant, Great White, Lita Ford, so on and so forth. And they every year book their Roadhouse stage at Rocklahoma as well. This year is no different, of course. Rocklahoma, my friends, is just about 5 weeks away now. Coming up on it. Labor Day weekend in Pryor, Oklahoma. The headliners of the Roadhouse stage the DB Concerts puts on will feature the Thursday night pre-party, Warrant and LA Guns, as well as a few other acts. And in the other 3 nights will feature Buck Cherry, Kicks, and Skid Row, all on the Roadhouse stage. Massive tent, tons of vendors. Get your food, drinks, and hang out and watch some great rock and roll. Speaking of great rock and roll, Kicks, like I said, will be one of those headliners, and this will be one of their final performances ever. They recently announced that they are retiring, and their final show is going to be, I keep saying sometime, I haven't looked up the date. Maybe on the next episode when I say this, I'm going to look up the date, but I believe it's in October in the Baltimore area where they're from. So do not miss one of your last chances to see Kicks. They're one of the best live bands you can see over the past several decades. In fact, their performance at Rocklahoma in 2008 is my favorite performance of all 15 years of Rocklahoma. Hands down. We're going to talk about that more, I think, on the Rocklahoma preview episode that'll be coming up here in a few weeks. So, anyway, DEB Concerts, debconcerts.com. Find ticket info there if you're going to Rocklahoma. Of course, hit up rocklahoma.com. Follow DEB Concerts on the socials. Facebook and Instagram and Twitter are all DEB Concerts. And tell them you heard about him right here on Thunder Underground. Chris Mclernon. This man has been doing it for quite a long time, and we talk about a lot of that stuff in this interview. The main thing we jump into is his new band Kinell, which is touted as not a tribute to Thin Lizzy, but basically like it's Thin Lizzy inspired, I believe is the way it was worded in their press release, and we kind of talk about that here as well. Where that was always, a lot of bands, you hear some bands and you think, well, they're obviously influenced by whoever. You hear it, but they don't really talk about it. But with this band, they're talking about the fact that that's what they set out to do. They set out to make a band that was inspired in the style of Thin Lizzy, but not be a carbon copy, not be a clone, still have its own uniqueness to it as well. You definitely hear that whenever you hear the vocals. Chris is singing on this as well. And he plays bass and guitars on this as well. They brought in I believe, has 4 different drummers for this, one of which is Barry Kirsch from Shinedown. We talk about that as well. But this is such a cool album. You really need to get your hands on it. It's called Crash, Burn, Rebirth. Came out last year. Not exaggerating, it's another one of those all killer, no filler type albums where you just want to check this thing out straight through. Songs like Spatial Survival, Say Goodbye, What Have I Done, Take Me Home is probably my favorite track on here. We talk about that as well. And Take It All, the current single, is fantastic. This whole album is great. You need to jump into it, and the fact that they already have two more albums in the works. You know, that whole thing kind of reminds me of Revolution Saints, because I talked to Dean Castronovo not that long ago, a few months ago, and it's the same kind of thing. Like, he started this band in the vein of Journey, and he handled, drums and vocals, and then knocked out an album and then quickly went and recorded a couple more. And he's done that twice now. Like, he's on the 4th album, but he's already got 5 and 6 recorded, what we talked about. But the difference with that one is I believe it was after the 3rd album, they've kind of shifted it to give it its own uniqueness away from what it originally was with that Journey-inspired thing. But, I regress because we're talking about Kinell and Thin Lizzy, all that great stuff. So this is really well done. It really straddles that line to where you can tell it's got the influence of Thin Lizzy in the sound of the music, in the style of the writing when it comes to lyrical content, the way it's a storytelling type thing. It's great stuff. And Chris was part of Cold Sweat, who has, reformed and done stuff with the Monsters of Rock Cruise and Monsters on the Mountain. And like he mentions in here, they're looking to do some more of those as well. And Saigon Kick is what he's most well known for. And that's another thing we go into great detail about, how he joined the band right whenever he joined them after they had recorded their 2nd album, The Lizard, and it was right when the band was taking off in the mainstream, because Love Is on the Way became a single right when he joined, and then it blew up into the huge hit that it was. It was all kind of this whirlwind thing, and within a year, they were recording Water, the 3rd album. The 3rd album. That's another thing. These albums that Chris was a part of with Saigon Kick, they came out in the mid-90s, get overlooked by, the mainstream audience, or mainly people that were into rock during that time period. They put out this album called Water, which is something we talked about because I just released the 30th anniversary vinyl this year. And then after that, they had Devil in the Details and Bastards. And they were reformed since then a couple times. I had the opportunity to finally get to see Saigon Kick in 2017. And I know that I assume when they got back together, it was, he kind of talks about it a little bit, but not in great detail. I'm sure it was a working relationship, because since then there's been stuff on social media between Matt, the vocalist of Saigon Kick, and Jason, the guitarist of Saigon Kick, kind of going back and forth as they have many times throughout the years. But in more recent memory, I saw something, actually, I believe it was early this year or late last year, from Matt. So I don't, that may or may not be something we get to see in the future, but, as a fan, I hope that it happens. Saigon Kick's one of those bands that, when you think of it, most people, when they think of them squarely planted in that glam rock, hair metal era of music. What's funny is that, their biggest hit, Love Is on the Way, and the song All I Want, which came out after that, which is a decent radio hit. Those songs came out in 1992, whenever all this stuff was all the stuff from the era of hair metal and glam metal and 80s rock, whatever you want to call it, was fading out, because most of those bands didn't really have hits after 91, but a few bands still were able to have success. And, I'm saying this because Saigon Kick wasn't really one of those bands. They were just there at the same time period. And sure, Love Is on the Way and All I Want fit greatly in with all that stuff, because they're great ballads. But when you listen to the songs that this band was putting out on those first two albums, like Hostile Youth and everything, it'd be more akin to maybe heavier Skid Row, after like their second album on, but not really in the same sense that you think of like a Poison or Danger, Warrant, even Motley Crue, that kind of stuff. And then especially once they got to Water and it got a little bit, more, I don't know if experimental is the right word or whatever, a little bit more stuff going on, eclectic, I guess is the right word. So this is a band that's kind of like, I always compared Saigon Kick and Extreme because they are both bands that are known by the majority of people that aren't diehard fans, known by a huge hit. There's an acoustic-based love song, huge hit. But the rest of their stuff is, hard rock, borderline heavy metal, and heavier than most of the bands of that time period. Not to knock on anything of that time period, I just always thought it was wild. It's kind of another thing I talked about with Jason on a few episodes ago about Ugly Kid Joe, because the same exact thing as well. And they came out and were having hits around the same time that Saigon Kick was as well. And they're another band that musically, their music style is nothing like that, even though they always get thrown in it. Which is just kind of funny. It's not really here or there because they came out and had hits, so we got to hear them. We know who they are, and that's the most important thing. Another thing that Chris has been doing for quite a while is Mclernon Multimedia, where he basically brings music or makes music or sources music, I guess, for television shows and commercials and projects like that. He's been doing that for quite a while. We go in a little bit on that, touch on that as well when we're talking about his production and stuff. But, I really dug this interview because, we kind of talk all over the place. We talk about his career, about his early days, and about some of the behind the scenes stuff, like the stuff he's doing with production and with Mclernon Multimedia and everything else going on. So with all that being said, let's just jump into this and hear what Chris has to say. Here's Chris Mclernon of Kinell, Saigon Kick, and Cold Sweat.
I think since it's kind of a specific style, not like mimicry, not like, I'm trying to do like Lenny Kravitz, like create a certain sound from a certain era, but it's a certain level of ingredients and style that I think people haven't heard much in America. They just know, because I want it to be like Thin Lizzy, and everyone knows like two songs from Thin Lizzy, or the other one they think is a Metallica song. I'm like, right. No, that's Thin Lizzy. So it's cool. It's gotten some really great response, and I'm just really happy with how it came out, because the goal was, okay, if I was going to make a record and give it to Thin Lizzy, I want it to sound like this, but modern, and that's how it's coming off. So I'm totally pleased.
I mean, with this being, like you said, Thin Lizzy inspired, was that the idea going into writing, or is this just kind of what happened when you and Colin got together? Or, so the whole concept was always inspired by Thin Lizzy? Okay.
It was in place. Yep. Because like, again, we're two Americans, so we found each other just through the local scene here in Charleston, South Carolina, and we just got to talking about it, and it wasn't like I could figure out right away he was not just a casual fan. He knew the catalog. I was like, cool, and it took off from there. Easy Come Easy Go was the first one written, and it was kind of like, wow, this fits that style, and so he's like, well, why don't we try doing some more? So here we are, and we're working on number 2. We just got the last drum tracks for that one accomplished. So we're going to start kind of polishing that one up and getting it ready. And then number 3 is about halfway written.
Oh, wow.
So blame this sort of production on the pandemic, or
Right.
output, I should say.
So was 2, like you said, was that already written at the same time as 1, and you're just now recording it and finishing it up?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because I think at least for me as a songwriter, once you get started, you kind of want to keep going, because you're on a roll, and it's like, oh, that's good, and this is good, and that's good, and this is good. And then if you take it, let's say 2 weeks off, all of a sudden it's like, where were we? what riff, whatever, I mean, you have to be careful, I think, when you're writing a glut that you don't repeat yourself. So there's that. But if the two songs that are kind of similar, and there was one or two, I was like, well, let's not put them on the same record.
Yeah.
Break them up.
Like, how hard is that to balance? I want this to sound inspired by Thin Lizzy, but also sound modern and like Chris as well. I mean, your voice obviously is different than Phil's, but like
intentionally.
Yeah.
There was no way I was going to try and here, let me see if I can wing it and make me sound like him. No, I fail horribly. So it was, I don't know, parts of it were difficult because we do a lead section and it would get a little ornate. And we're thinking, no, that sounds too shreddy, Dragon Forcey, who I love, but it's like, but it doesn't fit, it's got to fit this particular genre. So you want to keep the guitar stuff a little more pentatonic, bluesy. Really pay attention to how hooky the twin guitar parts are, because they're basically their own theme. And then the bass has to be catchy too. So you have these ingredients going in, and you want to hit these marks, and you just make sure you do. And if it's too much, it's easy to tell if it's too much because you go, okay, this is hard to remember. If it's good and it's simple, you're like, it's right in. You got it.
You said you've already got 3 albums worth of music written. Does it get hard to, well, you mentioned already, you had something that's kind of repetitive, but is it hard to not be repetitive since you're kind of in a box on what you're trying to sound like? Or
I thought about that a bunch of times, but I think with the template as it is, if you keep remembering it as a song as opposed to a collection of riffs, the song itself will break up the riff and make it less repetitive. But I mean, I purposely try and write in different keys, so it's not like, okay, if you listen to Van Halen 1, side 1 is pretty much in the key of A. There's another, I think side 2 is in the key of E, pretty much, except for Little Dreamer. So I try to avoid that as well, because those open string riffs are, tempting on a guitar. Okay, they sound great, but then it starts sounding the same. And especially if you walk into this stuff and immediately the songs start out with a harmony, you've got to make them, you consciously have to try and make them different for each one. But I guess it'd be like having a burger place, it's still a burger, but this one has, Monterey Jack on it. Right. So different. Oh, very nice. Well done.
Right. Well, a couple of my favorite tracks on this album are What Have I Done and Take Me Home, sorry.
Take Me Home.
Who is that's co-singing with you vocals on Take Me Home?
Take Me Home. That is Emily Richards. She's a singer here in a band. She was in a couple bands here, and they worked with Rick Beato. But she was Colin's singer in a couple of bands. So I was like, I don't want it to sound like I'm talking to myself here, because I flip the tables. It's always especially in Thin Lizzy, it's the guy who, is the big tough dude coming into the bar and picking up the chick. Like, let's flip it around. Let's get this noob in the bar who does not know what's going on. And, and the woman at the end of the bar has got a little more experience. Like, okay, baby, you're coming with me. But I thought if I sang both parts, it's going to be like, what am I going to imitate myself like Monty Python or something? Like, oh, come on, No, that won't work. So Colin goes, hey, man, how about Emily? He's like, bingo, done. Got it. But what I like about the fact that you just named those two songs, you're naming everyone names different songs that they like, which I think is good for the, like a little market research, and everyone's not going, I only like Take It All, right? So you named two different ones than the last two people I talked to, which is awesome. I love that.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, because the album to me is cohesive straight through. It's one of those, you don't really want to skip any tracks. And it actually, I felt like it got stronger as it went. Like if it was a record, side B to me almost felt stronger. And even like your single you're promoting now is the final track, which is kind of odd. Usually a single's like not the final track on an album. Which I thought was cool as well. Yeah, cool. Thanks. Yeah, and I did. That's kind of those. I do things sometimes to amuse myself too, because the album opens with a gong and ends with a gong. Yeah.
Like I always say, who's going to pick this up? But yeah, my favorite albums are the ones that don't have a filler track. So I mean, Colin and I really worked on it. Like, What Have I Done had a completely different chorus. I was like, this is not killing me. And he's like, no, it's good, man. So I'm like, it's not there yet. So I took it off, just, muted the vocal, kept everything else, muted the vocal, and just literally drove around in the car. It was in the car for, the next 2 or 3 days, and just put it in when I'm driving and go, man, no. All of a sudden I hit with What Have I Done? I was like, got it. There it is. So once you get that hook, the rest of the fish comes onto the boat. Because with that song, and a lot of them actually, since these are stories, and Phil was so good at weaving that sort of thing, I would get all the verses and the bridges and not have a chorus, because you have to have something to come back to if you're telling a story in a song. There's the chorus, the refrain, and I had 9 songs with no choruses. I'm like, oh my God, I got to think of something here. Okay, these people are talking about going to World War I and coming home, and there's the woman is feeling this, and the man's feeling that. Where's the commonality? And I'm just going, oh. And finally, after another, it's like, dink, okay, that one showed up. And then that one showed up. So a little bit of patience got me through.
Random side note, like, what's your favorite Thin Lizzy song overall? Or can you name one?
Yeah, good point. Can I name one? I think they have, like, when in Saigon Kick, we had categories for songs. We'd have the heavy one, the quirky one, the love song, the vibey one. We'd have all these, and then we'd write a bunch in that temp, and I guess in those recipe boxes, and then you just pulled the ones you liked. So like with Lizzy, I love some of the fast ones like Massacre or Waiting for an Alibi, or some of the bluesy ones like It's Only Money and Still in Love with You, but the live version. Black Rose is just, it's almost like Prague. There's so much crap going on in that one. And then there's the really simple stuff like With Love or Sarah or Borderline, so for me it's categories. There's somebody just gonna go, oh, what's that one? But every band has a couple of those.
Well, you self-produced this as well. I'm guessing with all your work in music with television that you've had production experience, or is this the first time you've done this?
Because with TV you had to come up with something quick, and they were typical, just champagne taste and beer budgets. Well, we needed to sound like, let's say for now, because she's having a huge a moment, is Taylor Swift, and you're like, do you realize that's like $1 million in recording and like 100,000 in just mastering, but you want this by Thursday? Okay, and you just learn fast. So that was a huge advantage coming into this, because you have to pick things apart. With TV, there's two kind of endings you have, which is the sustain and the just the boom, the drop, that So you have to write the song and make sure they have those parts in them. So then you start thinking, okay, let's take What Have I Done? So many of those stops and starts and dramatic points are all based on what I learned from TV writing. Like, how do you build this up and then pull the brake and then get them back in? So for me, the advantage of producing myself is I had all the time in the world this time, which can be a disadvantage because you overthink. But Colin's just a good a governor on the engine, just kind of like, okay, that's enough, dude. Pull it back. This one's okay. Okay, all right, okay, fine.
Well, I guess you kind of might have answered this a little, but with your experience of having recorded a bunch of albums with a producer and then doing this on your own, do you have a preference, or is it a little bit of both? Like having that outside voice, compared to just like your own vision 100%,
Yeah, I think for me to make it successful and be happy about it, I'll get it to a certain point, and then I have friends who are producers, or just I think like what would a producer I work with say? How would they tweak this and go, hey, you're almost there. But I trust the drummers I play with, who all have a stellar CV, and Colin just like, what do you think of this, man? Is it there yet? Is it not there yet? And that's where that production of the, let's grab the moment and make sure it comes off as the listener hears it, as opposed to, isn't this awesome? Well, yeah, it's perfect, but you've produced it to death. You've just sucked all the life out of it. So it's that hard thing to balance. I think if it was 10 years ago, I would, benefit more from a producer. And if, someone's out there and they go, I love to produce your record, and they go, well, I'm not going to turn them down, but it's, the reaction I've gotten so far is good. So I'm pleased with that.
Well, you mentioned the drummers, like as a bass player, do you have to adapt your sound to all these different drummers, or do you just kind of do your thing and it seems to work, or how did that process go?
I sent I think I sent What Have I Done to Barry, and like Spatial Survival to Rick. So they're friends and they know each other very well, but two very different drummers. But I didn't change much at all. But when they send stuff back, I'll get ideas based on what they played. So I think that kind of keeps it, keeps the road a little more open, as opposed to just, oh God, I've got to really twist and turn this stuff to make it fit to this guy, but I don't have to. But I also chose drummers, and luckily, they were willing to do it, based on how they played and their conception and their library of the styles. Like with Mark Danzeisen, who played on the first tune, What Might Have Been. I just said, hey man, he's got a big band background along jazz, but a bunch of rock. He played with Little Caesar and River Dogs and all that, so he knows what he's doing. But I was like, think 70s, think lots of tom toms, but think like kind of jazzy and R&B ish. And he goes, got it. And I was like, okay. And I sent it over to him, and he did. He indeed had it. I was like, wow, man, nice work. I didn't have to do anything.
Where did the idea come from to have several drummers as opposed to just bringing in one person?
Availability.
Oh, okay.
I mean, because these guys, Rick's in Florida, Barry's in Florida, Mark's in LA, and then Eric Rickard, who also played on, is here in Charleston. So Rickard played on Say Goodbye. So I was like, well, which is one of the last ones written. I was like, what do we do here? But I was like, he'd be perfect for it. So let's throw it at him. And sure enough, he played through it once. I was like, yep, you are. Boom, done. So it's more of a proximity thing, and in time, because Barry had to get out and tour, Mark had some obligations, so it's not like can you sit down and do all 9 of these at once? No, I can do 2. Cool, do those 2 and send them to me, then we go from there.
Well, speaking of Barry, his bandmate mixed this thing for you. Like, what did Eric bring to this process to make it what it is?
He brought a lot to it. Mostly for me, since I know him so well. He just say, hey, I'm working on the mix. I was like, oh, yeah, we are. So I get in the car and race out there. And he go, okay, check this out. You were doing this here, and you want this to build up here. So I'm doing this. I was like, okay, I wouldn't have thought of that. But then again, it's not like I have the track record he does. But his ability to make what we call like changing the scene. So when the song goes from this part to this part, there should be something about A to B that makes B different than A. So it makes you, oh, what was that? It could be a guitar part. It could be like Emily singing on Take Me Home. There's something that makes you go, wait a minute, is that sleigh bells? Which they're on there. Because he said, and his famous quote was, what we're doing, he goes, now don't get mad at me. Like, what do you mean? What do I get mad at? He goes, okay, I sang on this part. I was like, great, sounds great. What the hell are you thinking, dude? Or I put a tambourine here. Or I put oh, sure, why not? And it always did that same thing. Just pushed it just a little more. And then you don't keep piling on, but you bring things in and out, and like lighting in a movie. It's like, oh, it's dark. What am I paying attention to? Oh my God, the missile went off, and now it's all bright. You have to balance it. So that's what he's really good at. And then there's a lot of guitar work going on, and he knows how to do that kind of multi-level instrumentation. And the cool part was he was able to take a lot of the guitars out, because I just would pile on stuff. I'm like, woohoo, let's keep going, add another part. And he's like, okay, those are cool, but if you pull it back to this, it's cooler. And I was, he's right. So I wouldn't have done that. I would have just thrown the kitchen sink at it, because, why not?
Right.
You got all the garlic, use it.
Right. Well, I mean, speaking of playing guitar, was bass your first instrument, or did you start with guitar and then move to bass at some point? Or
yep, started with guitar.
Okay.
4th grade Catholic school. The nuns taught us how to strum, so I was like, okay, this is not really what I thought I was in for. And gave it up till about age 13 or 14, and saw the Beatles Hard Day's Night movie. I was like, hold on, that looks fun. No one told me about that in Catholic school, of course. And then there's a lot of girls here, and they seem to be having fun too. Let's try this again. So I bought a Beatles songbook and had a guitar that I had laying around fixed, because I got birthday money, of course, and I was too young to go to Vegas. So I just started strumming, and then met other guys and started playing in bands, but it was all guitar. And then I moved to Los Angeles as a guitar player. But at that point, I'm competing with the likes of like Paul Gilbert and Joey Tafoya and all. Like Slash had not come along and killed off the pointy-headed guitars yet, so everyone's still going skiddly boodly boodly, or we called it totally yeah, playing totally yeah. And I could do it, but it just wasn't me. I was more like the Slash player, but I was like, whatever. This is just getting to be too much competition. So I played bass on all my demos, and our drummer in Cold Sweat, Anthony White, said, "Dude, these, and these are the band. There's another band we were in." He goes, "Dude, try bass. Just, there's an opening in this band. Try bass, and it'll trust me, man. I know you want to be a guitar player, and you're good at it, but you can sing, and we need a bass player." All right, whatever, dude. So he was right. All of a sudden, I couldn't. I was just getting calls left and right. Like, whereas before, it'd be like you really have to go, like I said, go up against the guys who are just killers, and it's like golfers. All the 10 guys on the leaderboard are like a stroke away from each other.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it was all the time. I was like, as a guitar player, I was like, good God. But bass, it stopped, and I think because at that point I was still kind of learning how to be good at it, but I could sing. And that really set me apart, and that's how I got a couple of gigs. I walked in and just sang, and I go, well, because I can sing like Michael Anthony, in that concept, and they all wanted that. No one would sing. Okay, I mean, I could have been playing the bass upside down. I think they wouldn't have cared.
Singing, did that come from Catholic school, or like where did that start for you?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
My earliest memory is actually singing a Beatles song, jumping up and down on a bed with my godmother holding my hand. So and so I always sang. It's only, and this is actually where Eric comes in again. He's like, dude, you got to start singing. He's a backup singer as well, so we have that same mentality, be loud and be on pitch and have a strong voice. But, he's done his own solo work as well, where he's sung, and the mentality of trying to sing like a singer as opposed to a vocalist, like you're leading the song now. It's a different mentality. And I had to learn that. Because he'd send me back and he goes, dude, again, don't get mad at me, but sing this again, would you? Or just sing this verse. It doesn't have the conviction. And I'd be like, well, what am I missing? He's just like, try singing and like really over enunciating all the words. And I was like, okay. So I did that, like almost comically speaking, like you go, take it all, like that. And I'd listen back and go, it doesn't sound silly. It sounds perfect. And I never would have thought of that. So I went back and just started thinking, okay, I got to rethink these vocals. Like that doesn't, if I change it, will that give it the punch I'm looking at? Because you're always so paranoid about your own voice. I mean, this is what you do. So you're used to hearing your voice. But as you know, most people are like, oh, that's what I sound like. Yeah, well, start singing. And then you really get paranoid about that's what I sound like. so, I mean, and then I had, Brent Smith came in at one point when Eric was mixing what might have been. And I didn't know they'd been listening to it, right? Because they're in there writing for Planet Zero. And Eric goes, hey, man, I played it for Brent last night. I was like, you're kidding me. He goes, no, man, it was cool. I'm just going, oh, because I'm thinking, this is a guy who's done a few things as a vocalist.
Yeah.
Oh, man, really? And because and Brent is also the type of guy who goes, if he likes it, he likes it, loves it, tells you. Doesn't like it, well, man, I don't get it. You do what you do, but that's not for me. And it's very blunt, but it's genuine. It's not like, dude, that's fucking terrible. No, you don't get that. You just get, no, not for me. Okay, so let's go eat. So as we're sitting there and I'm getting over the horror that he played it for him, because at some point you're always that 14-year-old guy who walks in the room and wants to play the song with your friends and you don't know if you're good enough. Doesn't change. They just all your friends just get better. And you hope you catch up. So we're sitting there doing it, and I'm kind of getting over it. And I said, "Well, what do you think?" He goes, "He loved it. It was great. He thought it was fantastic." He said, "It sounded like Thin Lizzy meets Ghost." I was like, "All right, cool. Like, make that." And Brent, being Brent, just all of a sudden piles into the room. Hey, man, how's everyone doing? Blah blah. And I said, "Oh, just he goes, oh, you listened to the tune again?" And Eric goes, "Yeah, I'll be done in a bit here because they were going to work on something." He looks at me, he goes, "Man, I love this. It sounds great. Love your voice." He's like, "It's really cool. It's very different." And I'm just going, wow, okay, thank you. Yeah. And now that makes me go, all right, I've got a good start here. I can push forward as opposed to, hey, Grammy coming my way for best vocal performance. No, it's just, hey, I'm golfing. Hey, that was a good swing. You should do that again. Oh, all right, cool. Well, I will. So that was really helpful to have those two push me because, again, I'm coming off of all my gigs where I was the primary backup vocalist, and which is important.
Yeah.
But like in Van Halen, you got Michael Anthony, but until recently, you didn't really hear him singing lead. And he sings great lead, but it's a different animal. It's like going between, I'm sure, being a catcher in baseball and being when they used to put him out on first base. Different ballgame. Really is.
Having to change your approach a little bit when you're doing lead vocals? Do you think that's going to alter the way you sing backup vocals in the future? Or is it going to, I mean, you've been doing that for so long, it's probably second nature, but doing this now, do you think it's going to be something you have to stop and think about at all?
That's a great question, man, because Cold Sweat has been talking about doing some more of the Monsters of Rock cruises and the Monsters of the Mountain stuff. And so I'll know as soon as we get into rehearsals if they're like, hey, you want to tone it down? You want to sing with us as opposed to hogging the spotlight, mister? Sorry. I didn't mean to. Sorry. So, and like I said, they'll be honest with me. They'll go, you want to back that off? The other thing is I'm known as just being a really loud vocalist. Oh, I mean, you'd have like, here's the 3 levels, and I'm down here. And it never fails. Our sound would go, God, I've got you with 2/3 of the other guys. Like, yeah, sorry, I know. So I've got 2 things to watch. Then I've got to worry about being loud, and then trying to sing like a lead singer. So, but I think to your point, I think you're right. It's so in there. I know the parts. I rehearse those parts. It's going to be pretty quick to just, drop it back in.
Right.
I hope we're going to find out.
Right. Talking about Saigon Kick for a second, you guys released Water on vinyl recently.
We did.
30-year anniversary. I mean, is that weird to think about? I mean, I know you've obviously been doing this way longer than that with Cold Sweat and everything, but like just looking back now, is that just kind of, I don't know what the right word is, just kind of odd
weird.
to think it's been that long?
No, you got it right. It's weird. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a good weird because for 2 reasons. One, you realize, wow, that's a pretty good record because now it's just a slice of what you've done. It doesn't define it's in your definition kind of thing. Right. Like I was talking to somebody about Cold Sweat. I was like, wow, that was only like 18 months out of my life. So if you're a parent, for example, you just go, that's nothing. But it seemed like so much of your existence at that point. So in Saigon, we got the offer to do that reissue. Well, we did the first 2, but I, wasn't really on those, but I helped getting them together and that sort of stuff. And they're really well received. So the label Real Gone said, you know what, we'd like to do Water. And we have no artwork for that because it's all CD. It was never on vinyl. So I'm like, well, this is a gamble. How's it going to go? And they killed it. I mean, all the artwork it was so cool. It looks like it was supposed to be a record from that time. They really did a great job, and it sounds great. So for the first time, I put it on, and it was putting the needle in the groove on that record. I was like, wow, this is weird. It's like finding a plane, out in the desert and be able to pick it up and fly it again. It brought so much about that time back too, where we were. Matt had left in the middle of the recording and we're like, we got to finish this thing somehow. But, how? And that was the mindset, like, come on, man, we got to get it done. We can do it. And listening back, I go, well, okay, yeah, I hear us kind of going, I got your back. We got it. Let's get through this thing. Because a lot of that material had not been written at the time. We went into the studio with like 3 songs. So that was kind of interesting. Okay, we got to write this from the ground up. Then, of course, the label hears we don't have a singer, and they're ready to pull the plug in the middle of the sessions. So I didn't think of these things until I put the record on. So it was an interesting trip down memory lane. But the cool part about it was all the people who bought it were just over the moon. It sounds great and it looks great. So like, okay, cool. Part of your legacy is preserved and not rotting on the vine.
Right. What was that process like? Like you said, it was like less than 2 years or 1.5 years from when you joined the band to when Matt left and you guys were recording this. Like
at that point, it was 12 months. Literally, I'd been in the band a year. I joined right as the Lizard was hitting the stores, and they were editing the video for Love's on the Way. So that's when I came in. That's why I'm not in the video. If I'd been a week earlier, so we hit the road, and we didn't come home till the next May, and went literally right into the studio. Got home, packed our stuff, sent it over with Rocket Cargo, and boom, we're in Stockholm recording. It was that quick.
So were you thinking like with this band you joined, and here a year later it's now a 3-piece and it's a totally different thing in a way, even though Jason's vocals sound similar at times, but it's like, right. What was that? I mean, did you feel like this is something that can move forward, or how were you feeling at that moment?
Yes, but there was also a lot of holy crap, we've got our own. Someone handed us a rope. We pull ourselves out of here. We're going to hang ourselves.
Right.
because I knew that we could play for sure. I knew we could write. I could sing. So I just worked on my Matt imitation, frankly, and learned all his parts. And we got a guitar player named Pete Dombrowski, and he filled in on the Water Tour, and then he did Devil with us. And Pete can sing a little bit, so that was also helpful. But yeah, my first thought was, well, we're clearly getting more eclectic, which is fine with me, because the first two are very focused style-wise. There's a couple of jumps here and there, like Kinell or My Life. Not many records of that era have a kazoo on them. Right?
Right.
So, but Water has a jazz muted trumpet. It's got a choir, it's got strings, and I'm going, this sure fine with me. But things like Atlantic, they like a record company likes to have a recipe. Here's what we have. We want to just sell you as this. So we had to kind of fight back a couple times because that's just not what we're doing now. Just you want to follow us here, please. And it kind of went over. But it was definitely, we got to push through this. We just got to keep going and just push it and push it and push it. And Atlantic, at the time, I think what happened was Michael Douglas, who was the president of Third Stone, which is a subsidiary we were on, packed it in. And I think Atlantic just went, and left us to drift in the United States, whereas the rest of the world, we did great. And Doug Morris, who was the president of Atlantic at that time, picked all of the singles. He's like, you guys have us hit with this and this and this. And they didn't back us in the States, so down it went. But those were the songs that were hits all around the rest of the world. So we had something. I think, though, we were just way too far ahead of our time, which doesn't make it sound like we're from another planet and we foresaw the musical future and it is this. No, but I'll meet people now who are fans and bought it at the time. That's kind of the cool thing of this business. And they'll just come up to you and say, "Hey, man." And then they're in, band X or Y or Z, where you're just like, oh, this is actually, interesting. Really, you had the record and you listen, because Water was just this and Devil was just that. And it was so blah, blah. You're just going, wow, I guess we did okay. Then we pulled it out, because that's a panic situation, man. Anybody leaves in the middle of a record, woo, but we did it. We got it.
Was that whole time period, like, since it was pretty short, was that like a whirlwind for you? Because especially joining a band, like right when a hit single's taken off, I mean, not many people really ever have that experience, just coming in right whenever something's blowing up,
Yeah. I got congratulated on my business sense many times. Dude, you did it. You were just taking off. I'm like, I joined because it was my favorite band. I loved the band. I knew at that point in my career, the label could tell you, okay, here's the single, we're going to push it. And that doesn't mean A, they're going to do it, or B, it's going to get any traction. So yeah, it was crazy to go from because I was at a Cold Sweat at that point, and I was in Cold Gin, and that's how we were paying our bills, which is fun. But I mean, my wife and I are living in this shoebox in a Van Nuys drug neighborhood, and we're just like, how am I going to get out of this? And within 2 months of asking myself that question, I was out on the road with Saigon Kick, and we were watching the single go. It's like, wow, it's I mean, only in showbiz, man, or maybe athletics, or movies where you just, do this and then you're off just because of timing or fashion, whatever. I mean, I'm guessing that doesn't happen to bankers or lawyers much, so we're unique in that way.
I mean, were you guys, maybe not, because you talked about, the eclectic sounds on Water and even a few of the songs on the first couple albums, but the first couple albums outside of the ballads really didn't sound anything like that time period to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Like glam metal and hair metal and all that shit that it always gets lumped in with. Did that kind of bug you guys, or did you not care just because, it's out there and people can hear it,
Well, yeah, you're always glad people can hear it, right?
Yeah.
You're just glad to be, out of the club scene and like, okay, now the real competition starts. But yeah, I think people, we still get called a hair band, and you guys were a hair band. I'm like, oh yeah, go look at Soundgarden in the same year,
right?
Chris Cornell has hair to his friggin' waist. What are you guys talking about? Oh, we were hair farmers. We all were.
Right.
If you go to 1969, you have, Crosby, Stills, Nash, Young and all that, but you also have Alice Cooper, they're pretty different.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it was with Saigon Kick. Jason was smart enough or more astute as a songwriter to be able to write catchy songs, but you had these, heavy riffs. I always said we were like Metallica meets the Beatles, because those two could sing. Then I came in, so we had three people singing. At the time, now everyone gets it. They're like, okay, we were our own thing in that time. But you're like, oh, you guys, you'll see it on eBay. Hair band, Saigon Kick, Warrant, your Faster Pussycat. I was like, No. But I mean, we all get along because we're all the same age from the same era. But yeah, everyone in those bands goes, no, we're not like you guys, and you guys aren't like us. But and the fans like, we don't care. We just like what we like. Okay,
Yeah.
which is true. That's the way it should be. But yeah, labels, man. The hairband one cracks me up though.
Yeah.
Saigon Kick was not a hairband. We had hair, yeah.
Right.
We were not, putting the Aquanet in and taking the washcloth and getting it all fuzzy and out. And no, there was we were more hair farmers, I think, than anything else.
Right. Yeah. You didn't hear Faster Pussycat playing a song like Peppermint Tribe or,
right, exactly. Right. Which is cool because I mean, the guys in Faster loved us and, we loved them.
Yeah.
But absolutely, man. We did a gig with Warrant in Chicago and they were on the Dog Eat Dog record, which I thought was a great record, but it was just, just wrong place, wrong time. It's still good.
Oh,
but I knew those guys from the LA clubs. So we see them and they're just like, dude, are you going to play this one and play that one? I'm just going, if your basic fan who goes, no, man, we listen to only Saigon Kick and we don't listen to Warrant, or we listen to Warrant and Saigon Kick's too heavy or weird. Meanwhile, I got the two bands going, dude, you guys are awesome. I can't wait to hear Hostile, blah, blah, blah. And they're just going, yep, that's the way it should be, I guess. But no, you're both hair farmers. They're glam and you're not, but you're not really because you're alternative, but you're not really alternative because you're Saigon Kick and we can't figure out.
Right. I admit that, back then, I was like 15 when Love's on the Way came out, and I was really into like glam metal and stuff. I bought the album just because of that.
Right.
But then I fell in love with it. And, I never got the chance to see you guys in the 90s. And I finally got the chance in 2017 when you guys did that tour. Saw you guys in Dallas. So I was glad to finally get that opportunity before it was too late. I assume it's too late now. I don't know, but
did you see the open? No. You never know. know. But that Tree show, did you see the opening band?
I did, but I can't remember who it was. Or was it that band? Was it two piece?
I think it was. Yeah, and the guy had like a wig on and stuff. So it was like, are they messing with us or what? But they played one step closer. Like we're up in the dressing room and they played it and we all look at each other like, is that what I think it is? Yeah, and then so we met him afterwards. Like, oh man, we really love you guys. We love the Water record. Blah blah. I was like, well, yeah, clearly you played. I've never had that happen. That was fantastic. That was a good show. But Texas is always good for shows. So I met my wife in Texas. So I'm partial to Dallas.
I mean, not to keep bringing that up because I'm sure you get asked it all the time. But I mean, do you think there's a chance ever in the future that we could see Saigon Kick again, or is that bridge burned between Matt and?
No, I don't think it is. It's just because that's the way I am. And I didn't think the first one would happen, right? At all. When you would say maybe the wounds were fresher, whatever prevented things from happening. So, and once I think this is the recipe too. When bands reunite, they start off with a lot of teeth being bared and fists to cuffs being threatened and that sort of stuff. And then you start talking on the phone, you start mellowing out a little bit, and then you all agree on a dinner the night before the first rehearsal. And it's weird, and everyone's kind of polite, but there's just kind of this anxiety over the table that no one is really attacking or acknowledging, but everyone's being cool and been a little bit, you don't know what to do, really. Is something going to go crazy here? Is someone going to walk off? Is someone going to come over and say, oh, I always loved your song, Bathroom Wall, they're going to get the band wrong, they're just like... And that's happened. Oh, it's happened. And then you go play the first song at rehearsal and everyone goes, okay, we're on. We got it. Let's do this. And so it wipes everything out of the way. So in my mind, it's always possible, but that's just me. This is the way I think.
Well, side note then, what's the weirdest or most random song you could think of that someone's mentioned to you that they loved by you? That wasn't you. I mean,
I would say, it's off the Devil in the Details, probably All Around, because it's Saigon Kick always kind of skirted punk, but we never really went after it. Like What Do You Do is kind of punky, but it's got a lot of dynamics, which is not really very punky. Usually it's right out of the gate. Either that one or like Victoria, because that's got kind of the piano going and the kind of swing feel. And because I'm always just assuming because we're a good live band, people want to hear the live stuff, the guitar songs, because they're great. So I'm always very pleased when someone says, you know what tune I really love? I love Sunshine, Or I love My Heart off of Water, because it's just a drum and a guitar, and then guitars go out and the vocals come back in, and it's just, me, Phil, and Jason just pounding on these giant floor toms. So those are the fun ones when people come and go, oh, what nice, because as you're going to expect Love's on the Way, or All I Want, or something like that. Spanish Rain if we're overseas, or On and On if we're overseas. Like, okay, cool, I get that. But when they put one of the other ones, they're like, oh, cool, you listen to the rest of the record. Thank you.
Right. Well, speaking of records, you mentioned you've already got the second one almost done and the third one on the way to being written. Like, do you have a time period on when you're going to do this? Do you think it's going to be 2024 or?
Good question. Because here's why. I have another thing I'm finishing. It's an EP. I have a whole record, but Eric was like, you know what, man, just release EPs for now. You can always release it as side A, and then side B is, now you get the full record. Yeah. And it's a really kind of heavy, like Dio era Sabbath kind of heavy. So very, chunky on the riffs, but songs again, very, I've been told, like, you write the most. If the guys in Saigon all made solo records, yours would be the most like a Saigon record. It's like, well, yeah, because I'm the biggest fan of the band, and it's called Megaton, and it's just all really, it's super heavy. Then I've got another one that's already out, and I'm just trying to figure out what to do with it. It's already posted on Bandcamp, but it's a punk record, all about, because when we did the Kinell record, and because Colin loves punk as much as I do, I was like, God, I got all these other ideas just brewing in my head. So I was like, all right, let's do a punk record, no guitar solos, and the songs have to be 2 minutes or under. So there's 10 songs. It's 29 minutes long. And it's all about my first couple of years moving to Los Angeles in 1985. And it's called Bronson Avenue. What is it called? Goodbye, Cruel World. So that's out there. And I came up with the idea for a second one. So, because punk songs you can kind of like rip out quick, because you get to the point. Because if you think too much on that, you're going to really ruin it. So there's that. And then I have an instrumental surf band too. So I have 4 records out on that. So I've got to finish the 5th one. So yeah, make hay while the sun shines, right?
Right. I mean, is any of this stuff you're doing live, or are these all just studio projects?
This is all studio projects, yeah. Because getting, like, even if we got Kinell together, and we've thought about doing them locally here, just to do it, to have fun. Like, okay, well, Rick would have to learn the whole record, the whole thing. That's cool. But then what do I do for the lineup? Do I sing and play bass, or do I sing and play guitar?
Right.
And we've gone back and forth about it. I'm partial. I think I should play bass, because I think since we have Pro Tools and all that stuff, I can send some in the session and they can look at the guitar solo and get it exactly right. They can learn it. Guitar players are good like that. But if the bass doesn't sound a certain way with the drums because of the style, I'll be doing this the whole night. It's not how it goes. But it's a guitar solo, and they kind of, they vary from, okay, that was kind of cool, But if you change the groove because you didn't feel like learning it, so that's why I'm leaning toward playing bass.
Right on. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time with me today. I love the Kinell record. I'm going to look into all this other stuff you just mentioned, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, man. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
There you go, Chris Mclernon of Kinell, Saigon Kick, and Cold Sweat. A huge thank you to Jody Best of Best Bet Promotions for her continued support of this podcast, and a massive thank you to Chris for taking that time out there to hit me up on Zoom and talk about all the stuff he's got going on. Something that hit me after the fact that I should have asked was, I wonder if Cold Sweat, the band, I'm sure someone's asked him this in a interview question in recent times, because since he's promoting his band Kinell, which is Thin Lizzy inspired, I'm wondering if the band Cold Sweat, if their name came from the Thin Lizzy song Cold Sweat. It probably did, but maybe not. Anyway, that's a question, I guess, for next time. All right, if this is your first time listening, I greatly appreciate it. Speaking of Thin Lizzy, Ricky Warwick has been on this podcast before. He is the current vocalist of Thin Lizzy. He is also the vocalist of Black Star Riders. When he was on this podcast, Damon Johnson was on it with him because he was in Black Star Riders at the time, and he is also technically still in Thin Lizzy, I believe. They haven't done anything live in quite a while since pre-pandemic. Damon Johnson has actually been on this podcast more than anybody at 6 times. Damon Johnson is now in Leonard Skinner. He took Gary Rossington's place, even before Gary passed. And of course he has Brother Kane. He was in Alice Cooper and all that great stuff as well. But that's another question that probably should ask what Chris's thoughts were on Black Star Riders. Being a huge Thin Lizzy fan, I would assume he'd dig some Black Star Riders. And then on the other side of this, bringing up glam bands after we talked about how Saigon Kick wasn't a band from that era. We've had a lot of those bands on here, so I'm going to talk about them because I know a lot of people that love Saigon Kick love those bands. So bands like that have been represented on here with members, Tesla. Frank Hannon's been on here several times, as well as Brian Wheat. Mark Kinell from Great White's been on here a couple times. Robin McCauley of McCauley Schenker Group and Black Swan has been on here several times. Reb Beach of Whitesnake and Winger. Tracy Guns and Phil Lewis of LA Guns. Phil Lewis was on here recently again just a few months ago. Dean Castronovo of Journey. Members of Warrant, Firehouse, Trickster, Kix, Lillian Axe, Vivian Campbell of Def Leppard and Dio, Dizzy Reed of Guns N' Roses, Gene Simmons of Kiss, Bruce Kulick, formerly of Kiss and currently of Grand Funk Railroad. And then we get heavy as well. Alex Skolnick of Testament. Dave Elfson, formerly of Megadeth, has been on here a couple times. James Lomenzo, currently of Megadeth. Chris Broderick, formerly of Megadeth. Members of Whitesnake, White Zombie. Prong, Typo Negative, Helmet. Motley Crue, Sons of Texas. Three Doors Down, Clutch. Corrosion and Conformity. Shinedown. Saliva. The list is massive, my friends. This is episode 381, so that means you've got 380 previous episodes you can check out. So please do that. TheThinUnderground.com. You can listen right there, or you can listen pretty much anywhere podcasts are heard, wherever you're listening right now. Hit like, subscribe, whatever it is, so you don't miss future episodes. Speaking of future episodes, Peter Summit of Crashing Wayward is going to return to the podcast to talk about the band's brand new album. Their debut album just came out here not that long ago. Great stuff. We're going to be talking about that with him shortly. I've also got some other stuff in the works. But yeah, follow us on the socials so you don't miss any of that. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and everywhere else. I'm on other places like Threads and TikTok that I don't use, but we'll get there, folks. We eventually will. I think that wraps it up once again. So a huge thank you once again to Best Bet Promotions, DEB Concerts, Sunset Tattoo, and Chris Mclernon. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.